It is my great pleasure to welcome to our pulpit and to Trinity this morning Emily Esfahani Smith. Emily is no stranger to New Haven. She lived here for a brief while her husband was in law school. And I had the pleasure of meeting her in 2019 when she was a Yale Poynter Fellow in Journalism, speaking to the medical school and to the School of Management here in New Haven. At that time, her book, The Power of Meaning, was gaining lots of attention, a book that I think has only gained in capturing our hearts as we have endured the pandemic and so many challenges in our life. As a deacon, I must say, having just proclaimed those words about our life and the meaning of our life, it's really wonderful to welcome you here to expand on that theme and share from your wisdom. So we're so grateful to have you here, Emily.
It's really wonderful to be here with all of you today, and truly an honor. Lent has always been one of my favorite times of year. I love that there is a period of time when we're encouraged to turn inward, to reflect, and to be contemplative. Over the years, I've had different Lenten rituals, from waking up early in the morning and meditating to going on silent retreats, or other efforts to invite solitude and peace and stillness into my life. As a writer, I've written about the importance of solitude and stillness. I've written about my experience at the Abbey of Gethsemane for a silent retreat. And 5 years ago to the day, I set off on a 3-day drive for the desert of far west Texas so that I could spend some time alone, 40 days in the presence of God. I wanted to empty myself so that I could have the inner space to receive God. Be still and know that I am God, it reads in Psalm 46. In a similar spirit, above the gates leading into a garden at Gethsemane are the words, God alone. When the noise and turmoil of the profane world are cleared away and the mind is at peace, an individual can hear the silent sound of being, or that's what I thought at the time. In his book, A Time to Keep Silence, which is a chronicle of his time through 3 monasteries in Europe, the travel writer Patrick Leigh Fermor wrote, "Modern life is an inferno of noise and vulgarity, but in the seclusion of a cell, an existence whose quietness is only varied by the silent meals, the solemnity of ritual, and long solitary walks in the woods, the troubled waters of the mind grow still and clear, and much that is hidden away and all that clouds it floats to the surface and can be skimmed away. And after a time, one reaches a state of peace that is unthought of in the ordinary world." I read Fermor's book first when I was in college, and if you'd have asked me back then what I wanted to be when I grew up, and if I were being completely honest with you, one part of my heart would have said a nun. I became a writer in part so that I could live a sort of monastic life. The quiet, the peace, the stillness, things I've always longed for. But then I had kids. At home, I have a small baby and a toddler. In the past, mornings and evenings were times of quiet, meditative silence for me. These days, not so much. I spend those hours singing the wheels on the bus with my toddler, wrangling him to brush his teeth, or wondering why he splayed out on the floor in full tantrum mode when I gave him the very blueberries that he just asked me for. Then there's the newborn crying in the background, poor Thomas, whom I am benignly neglecting. I don't think I know what silence sounds like anymore. The world of Gethsemane seems so very far away, like a distant dream. It occurred to me how alienated I am from this world on Ash Wednesday of this year. I was running an errand on my short lunch break, looking for a Valentine's Day card for my husband when I saw people walking around with those ashy crosses on their heads. Wow, I had completely forgotten. I quickly Googled Ash Wednesday service times to see if I could make it to church, but nothing worked with my schedule of picking up the kids, dropping them off, seeing my therapy clients at the private practice. I saw people streaming into a Catholic church down the street, and I decided to drop into the service, even if just for 20 minutes. I rushed to the church, sat in a pew at the very back, and then 2 minutes later got up and left. I was anxious about being late for my 1 p.m. meeting. I was failing big time at Lent, and I felt unsettled, like a bottle of soda that's been shaken up. On my train ride to New Haven yesterday, I thought I would redeem myself. I thought, okay, this is the perfect time for some solitude. I sat in the quiet car of the train and put my headphones in and hit play on a 30-minute guided meditation. I must have fallen asleep because 30 minutes later, I awoke with a spasm, my mouth agape, and was awakened by the sound of my own snoring. Sorry to everyone on the quiet car with me that day. So as I thought about being with you all this morning, I wasn't sure that I'd have anything to say that was really worth sharing. But then it occurred to me that maybe I'm not alone. Maybe I'm not the only one who is having a hard time carving out quiet moments to feel the presence of God, the divine, whatever you want to call that sacredness this Lenten season. Preparing for this talk, I revisited the writings of Thomas Merton, who called contemplation the highest expression of man's intellectual and spiritual life. But he did not think that contemplation was the reserve of monks and mystics alone. Everyone was capable and in need of it. Contemplation, he wrote, is spiritual wonder. It is a spontaneous awe at the sacredness of life, of being. It is gratitude for life, for awareness, and for being. It is a vivid realization of the fact that life and being in us proceed from an invisible and infinitely abundant source. Contemplation is, above all, awareness of the reality of that source. In other words, then, contemplation reaches out to the knowledge and even to the experience of the transcendent and inexpressible God. That is to say that contemplation is not the consideration of some abstract philosophical truth. Rather, it's a way of seeing and experiencing the world. And can occur, yes, when you're reading or writing or praying or meditating or walking, but it can also occur, I realized, when running an errand or cooking dinner or caring for kids. Contemplation, Merton was saying, is an activity during which the mind is open to and aware of God. He's not alone in thinking this. I remember several weeks ago, I was with a friend of mine, a Catholic, also a young mom, and she told me about the writings of a Catholic priest named Ron Rolheiser. And he once made this point about parenting specifically. There's a tradition, he said in one of his sermons, among spiritual writers that we will not advance within the spiritual life unless we pray at least an hour a day privately. Well, a mother came up to him after he said that and said, how am I supposed to find an hour in the day to pray privately when I have kids tugging at my pants and I'm changing diapers and all this chaos is happening around me? At the time, Rolheiser thought that he would respond to her by saying, well, it's even more important for somebody in your position to find those quiet moments of the day. But then he thought about it differently. And he thought, and I quote him, if you are at home alone with small children whose needs give you little uninterrupted time, then you don't need an hour of prayer, private prayer daily. Raising small children, if it is done with love and generosity, will do for you exactly what private prayer does. Certain vocations, he said, like raising children, offer a perfect setting for living a contemplative life. They provide a desert for reflection, a real monastery. As I think about my kids now, I realize that I often find myself in a state of awe as I watch them play or coo or absorb the world around them. I see in their faces the image of the divine reflected back at me, and it can sometimes take my breath away. Are these moments of contemplation too? I think Merton and Rollheiser would say yes. 5 years ago, when I told my Persian grandmother, a devout woman herself, that I was going on a 40-day silent retreat in the desert, she asked me why. In my broken and childlike Farsi, I said I wanted to go out there to see if I could find God. She looked at me bemused and said, "You don't need to go to the desert to find God. He is everywhere." I don't need to withdraw to the desert. When I'm scrubbing bottles in the sink or changing diapers or begging my toddler to brush his teeth or scrubbing the residue of milk, spit up, or peanut butter fingerprints off from my sweater at work, these moments too are opportunities I see now for prayer and contemplation. If only if I can open myself up to God rather than getting lost in the hustle and bustle of daily life. But of course, it's not just parenting. We can live a contemplative life through the work that we do and the interactions we have with others, in the small moments of connection we experience with ourselves or others and the world around us. These too can be moments I see now of what Merton called spiritual wonder. To paraphrase Ralph Waldo Emerson, to the dull mind, all the world is leaden. To the illuminated mind, the whole world burns and sparkles with light. I want to end by talking about a poem by the 20th century American poet Anthony Hecht. The poem is called Venetian Vespers, and it's about a man whose life is full of tragedy and sorrow. But he still manages to find moments of grace and redemption in small encounters with beauty. At one point in the poem, he is describing a rainstorm at length. He observes and gives words to every single detail that he sees. The clouds are not just these gray things in the sky. They are shrouded vaults, fog-bound crevices. He listens to the rain, and he says, it's like a whisper of dry leaves. He watches it and sees how it stains the paving stones, forms a light mist of brilliant crystals dulled with tones of lead, 3 inches off the ground. These beautiful details. And then later he writes, to give one's whole attention to such a sight is a sort of blessedness. One escapes from all the anguish of this world into the refuge of the present tense. And that is a refuge I see now that is available to me when I'm with my kids, to me when I'm here, and to all of us. These moments of spiritual wonder, of spontaneous awe at the sacredness of life. Thank you.